The steel pipe connected with Luna's hind leg with a sickening crack. The 3-year-old German shepherd collapsed into the snow, her swollen belly hitting the frozen ground hard. Marcus Crawford stood over her, his breath reeking of whiskey in the -12-degree Detroit night. "You're worthless now," he spat, kicking the cage door shut behind her. "Can't fight? Can't make me money anymore?" Luna tried to stand on 3 legs, but her shattered limb buckled beneath her weight. She looked up at Marcus with those same brown eyes that had once pulled him from the Belle Isle Bridge, that had saved his miserable life 5 years ago. He didn't even flinch. The truck engine roared to life. Headlights swept across Luna's broken, bleeding body one last time before disappearing into the December darkness. Luna was alone, pregnant, dying, 4 miles from anywhere in sub-zero cold. And her contractions had just begun. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Sarah Mitchell's shift had ended 20 minutes ago. All she wanted was to get home to her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, who was waiting at her grandmother's house with hot cocoa and Christmas cookies. Then she heard the scratching. Faint, desperate, coming from the side entrance of St. Mary's Hospital emergency room. Sarah turned back, her nurse's instinct overriding her exhaustion. The scratching came again, weaker this time. She pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the brutal cold. Luna lay crumpled against the concrete, her broken hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood had frozen in dark patches across her tan and black coat, but it was her belly that made Sarah's breath catch massively swollen, contracting visibly beneath the matted fur.
"Oh, God,"
Sarah whispered, dropping to her knees.
"Oh, God, no."
Luna's eyes opened slowly. They were brown, clouded with pain, but desperately focused. The dog lifted her head an inch, then let it fall back down. She was giving up. "No, no, no, stay with me." Sarah pressed her fingers against Luna's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but racing dangerously fast. She ripped off her winter coat and wrapped it around the shivering animal. Jeff, I need help." The security guard appeared in the doorway, his face going pale. "Ma'am, that's a dog. We can't—" "Call Dr. David Reynolds. Now, tell him it's life or death." "But hospital policy—" "Now!" Sarah had carried unconscious humans before, but Luna was dead weight, at least 60 pounds of limp muscle and fur. She half-dragged, half-carried the dog into the heated waiting room, leaving a trail of melted snow and blood across the linoleum. Luna's breathing had become shallow, rapid. Her gums were pale pink, almost white, a sign Sarah knew too well from trauma patients. Shock, severe blood loss, hypothermia. And those contractions. Every 30 seconds now. Luna's entire body went rigid. 15 minutes later, Dr. David Reynolds burst through the emergency room doors, his veterinary bag in hand. He was still in his pajamas under his winter coat. One look at Luna and his jaw tightened. "How long has she been like this? I found her maybe 20 minutes ago. Broken leg, severe trauma, and she's in active labor. I can see that." David knelt beside Luna, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. He checked her eyes, her gums, pressed gently on her abdomen. His expression grew darker with each examination. "Sarah, this is bad. Really bad. Tell me." David pulled out a small handheld ultrasound from his bag and ran it across Luna's belly. The screen showed 6 distinct shapes, some moving, some ominously still. 6 puppies, full term. But look here. He pointed to the monitor. Her body temperature is 97 degrees. She's hypothermic. Heart rate is 140. She's tachycardic from blood loss. And these old rib fractures. He traced his fingers along Luna's sides. This dog has been systematically abused for years. Sarah felt her throat constrict. "Can you save her?" David was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was grave. "She's hemorrhaging internally. Those puppies are putting pressure on damaged organs. If we don't operate within the next 2 hours, the puppies will start dying inside her womb. The dead tissue will cause septic shock. She'll die in agony." So we operate. Sarah, David looked at her directly. This is a human hospital. We don't have the equipment I need. No veterinary surgical tools. No canine blood for transfusion. And Michigan law explicitly prohibits using hospital medical resources for animals. If we do this, you could lose your job. I could lose my license. Sarah stared down at Luna. The dog's eyes were half open, watching her, trusting her. Then we have 2 hours to figure it out, Sarah said quietly. Because I'm not letting her die on my watch. David nodded slowly, already reaching for his phone. That's when the emergency room doors opened again. Dr. Margaret Foster, the hospital director, stood in the doorway. Her expression was ice. Ms. Mitchell, what exactly is going on here? Dr. Margaret Foster was 62 years old and had run St. Mary's Hospital for the past 15 years with an iron fist wrapped in bureaucratic velvet. She did not bend rules. She certainly did not break them. Ms. Mitchell, I understand your compassion, Dr. Foster said, her voice level but firm. But this is a human hospital. We have liability concerns, state health regulations, and… She's dying, Sarah interrupted. Right now, right in front of us. That's unfortunate, but it's not our responsibility. The nearest 24-hour veterinary emergency clinic is 45 minutes away in this weather. David cut in. The roads are barely passable. She won't survive the transport. Dr. Foster's expression didn't change. Then that's a terrible tragedy, but I cannot authorize the use of hospital resources, staff time, and medical equipment for an animal. The legal exposure alone. So we just let her die. Sarah's voice rose, in front of our emergency room on Christmas Eve. Ms. Mitchell, I sympathize, truly, but I have a duty to this hospital, to our patients, to our funding sources. If the state medical board finds out we diverted resources to treat an animal, we could face sanctions, fines, even closure. That would affect hundreds of human patients who depend on us. Dr. Foster's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. Sarah opened her mouth to argue, but David touched her arm. Dr. Foster, what if we don't use hospital resources? What if I use my own equipment, my own supplies? In a hospital facility, that's still a liability issue. If something goes wrong, then it's on me personally. Dr. Foster shook her head. I can't allow it. I'm sorry, but this conversation is over. Please remove the animal from the premises immediately. She turned to leave. Wait, a voice said from the doorway. Emily Carter stood there, still in her scrubs from the night shift. She was 32, had been working at St. Mary's for 6 years, and had never once challenged hospital policy. Until now. Dr. Foster, Emily said quietly. With all due respect, I'm taking my 15-minute break. What Ms. Mitchell chooses to do in the public waiting room during her off hours is not hospital business. Dr. Foster's eyes narrowed. Ms. Carter, if you think that technicality will… I'm not thinking anything. I'm taking my break. Emily walked over to Sarah and handed her a key card. The physical therapy room. It's cleaned and sanitized daily. Not technically an operating room, but it'll do. Dr. Foster's face reddened. Ms. Carter, you are this close to termination. Then fire me, Emily said calmly. Fire me for taking a break. I'm sure the nurses' union will find that fascinating. For a long moment, the two women stared at each other. Finally, Dr. Foster spoke, her voice cold as the winter night outside. Fine. You want to throw away your careers for a dog? Be my guest. But when this goes wrong, and it will, don't expect me to protect you. She turned to the security guard. Jeff, you saw nothing. Understood. Jeff nodded quickly. Dr. Foster walked out without another word. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Emily, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, Emily said softly. Now let's move her before someone else shows up. They carried Luna to the physical therapy room. It wasn't sterile, but it was clean and warm. David immediately began unpacking his equipment while Sarah and Emily set up makeshift monitoring stations using whatever they could scrounge without officially requisitioning hospital supplies. David worked quickly, his hands steady despite the irregular circumstances. He started an IV line, administered fluids, checked vital signs again. Then he pulled out his portable ultrasound for a more thorough examination. His face went pale. "What?" Sarah asked. "What is it?" David didn't answer immediately. He moved the ultrasound wand slowly across Luna's distended belly, studying the screen intently. Then he set it down and looked at Sarah with an expression that made her stomach drop. "We have a bigger problem than I thought." "How much bigger?" "One of the puppies is already dead. Here." He pointed to a dark, motionless shape on the screen. "Puppy number 2. Probably died hours ago. It's starting to decompose, which means it's releasing toxins into her system. That's causing the internal bleeding." Sarah felt the room tilt. "So we get it out. We operate now." "It's not that simple." David's voice was tight. "Look at her blood pressure. 60/40. That's critical. She's hemorrhaging, probably from a uterine tear. And her heart rate is climbing 145 now. She's going into shock. What do you need? Tell me what you need." "A blood transfusion. At least 300 milliliters, but I don't have canine blood. The vet blood bank is closed until morning." "What about a donor?" "Another dog." "Possible. But we'd need to find one with the right blood type, DEA 1.1 positive, and even then, we can only safely take about 450 milliliters from a 70-pound dog. It might not be enough." Sarah grabbed David's arm. "Might not be enough for what?" David met her eyes. The truth in them was devastating. "For both. It might not be enough to save both Luna and all the puppies." He glanced at the monitor, where Luna's heart rate continued to climb. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. Even if we find blood, even if we operate successfully, we might have to make a choice." "What kind of choice? Save the mother or save the babies? We might not have enough resources, enough blood, enough time to save them all." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Luna's body convulsed with another contraction. On the monitor, her blood pressure dropped another point. 60/35. Time was running out. Time. Emily Carter had been standing silently in the corner, but now she moved forward and knelt beside Luna. She placed her hand gently on the dog's head. Luna's eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment, their gazes locked. Then Emily did something unexpected. She leaned down and whispered something in Luna's ear that no one else could hear. When she stood up, there were tears on her cheeks. "I have a German Shepherd," Emily said quietly. "His name is Max. He's 5 years old, 72 pounds, perfectly healthy." David looked up sharply. "Emily, I had his blood typed last year when I was thinking about registering him as a therapy dog. DEA 1.1 positive. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. "He can donate." Sarah felt a surge of hope so powerful it almost hurt. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Emily's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "I had a daughter, Grace." She was 7 years old when a drunk driver ran a red light on December 23rd, 5 years ago. The date hung in the air. 5 years ago. Tonight? Grace died on the way to the hospital, Emily continued. She loved animals more than anything in the world, always begged me to let her volunteer at the shelter. She wanted to be a veterinarian. Emily's voice cracked. "The night she died, In the ambulance. She made me promise something. She said, "Mommy, always help the ones who can't speak for themselves." Sarah reached out and took Emily's hand. "I got Max 6 months after Grace died," Emily said. "He saved my life. Gave me a reason to get up every morning. And tonight, looking at Luna," she wiped her eyes. "This is what Grace would have wanted. This is how I keep my promise to her." She lifted the phone to her ear. "James, honey, I need you to bring Max to the hospital." "Right now, yes. I know it's almost 1 in the morning. I know the roads are terrible, but I need him. Please. For Grace." 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Sarah stayed by Luna's side, monitoring her vital signs as they continued to deteriorate. Blood pressure 55/30, heart rate 150 and climbing, temperature still dangerously low at 97.3. "Come on, girl," Sarah whispered. "Just hold on a little longer. Help is coming." Luna's breathing was shallow, rapid. Each contraction seemed to take more out of her. On the ultrasound, David could see the puppies moving, all except the dead one, the dark, ominous shape that was slowly poisoning Luna from the inside. Finally, the door opened. James Carter, Emily's husband, stood there with a large German shepherd on a leash. Max was beautiful, strong, healthy, with alert ears and intelligent eyes. When he saw Luna, he pulled toward her, whining softly. "Easy, boy," James said, but Max was insistent. He walked up to Luna and gently sniffed her face. Then he did something remarkable. He lay down beside her, pressed against her side, sharing his warmth. Luna opened her eyes and looked at him. For the first time since Sarah had found her, something like peace crossed the injured dog's face. "Max knows," Emily said softly. "He knows she needs help." David moved quickly. He had done canine blood draws hundreds of times, but never under these circumstances, never with this much riding on it. He drew 450 milliliters from Max, the maximum safe amount for a dog his size. Max never flinched. He kept his eyes on Luna the entire time. "Good boy," David murmured. "You're a hero. You know that." The blood transfusion began at 1:17 in the morning. Sarah watched the dark red fluid flow through the IV line into Luna's vein, willing it to work, praying to whatever power might be listening. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Luna's gums began to pink up, just slightly. But it was there. "It's working," David said, his voice tight with cautious hope. "Blood pressure is rising. 58/33, 60/35. 15 minutes later, Luna's vitals had stabilized enough to attempt surgery. Blood pressure 70/45, heart rate down to 120, still critical, but survivable. "We need to move now," David said, "before she crashes again." They prepped Luna as quickly as possible. Emily had somehow procured surgical drapes, sterile gloves, and basic instruments without officially checking them out of hospital inventory. David administered propofol for anesthesia, carefully calculating the dose for Luna's reduced body weight and weakened condition. Sarah positioned herself at Luna's head, monitoring her breathing and heart rate. Emily assisted David with the instruments. James stayed with Max, who watched intently from the corner. David made the first incision. "First puppy," he announced moments later. A tiny, wet bundle emerged. He cleared its airway, rubbed it vigorously with a towel. A thin, high-pitched cry filled the room. "Alive," Emily breathed. Sarah felt tears on her face. 1 down, 5 to go. "Second puppy." David's voice was quieter this time. The puppy that emerged was gray, lifeless, the one that had died hours ago. He set it aside gently. "Third puppy." Another cry. Another life saved. The tension in the room began to ease. They were going to make it. Luna was going to make it. David reached for the 4th puppy. Then the monitor started screaming. The monitor's alarm was a shriek that cut through the room like a blade. Flatline. "She's coding," David shouted. "Sarah, start compressions." Sarah's training took over. She positioned her hands on Luna's chest and began pushing. 1, 2, 3, 4, counting in her head. Pushing hard enough to circulate blood, but not so hard she'd break the already damaged ribs. 30 compressions. David forced air into Luna's lungs with an ambu bag. Nothing. "Continue," David barked. He fumbled for the emergency drug box Emily had quietly placed on the counter. "Emily, draw up 0.3 milligrams of epinephrine." Emily's hands shook as she filled the syringe. Sarah kept compressing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sweat dripped down her face despite the cool room. 5, 6, 7, 8. Clear. David injected the epinephrine directly into Luna's vein. They waited. 5 seconds. 10, 15. The monitor remained flat. Again. Sarah resumed compressions, her arms burning. She could feel Luna's ribs shifting under her palms, some of them already broken from years of abuse, now breaking further under the pressure needed to save her life. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered between compressions. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." 2 minutes of CPR. David administered a second dose of epinephrine. "Sarah, she's lost too much blood," David said, his voice strained. "Her heart can't sustain." "No." Sarah pressed harder. "We don't give up. We don't give up on her." 30 compressions. Breathe. 30 compressions. Breathe. Then a single beep from the monitor. Another beep. A rhythm. Weak. Irregular. But a rhythm. "We've got her back," David said. But there was no relief in his voice. "But Sarah, look at this." On the surgical field, blood was pooling faster than David could suction it away. Luna's blood pressure on the monitor 60/40. Dropping. David's face was ashen. "She's hemorrhaging. Massive uterine tear. It must have happened during the cardiac arrest." His hands moved quickly, trying to locate the source of the bleeding. "I need to do an emergency hysterectomy right now or she's going to bleed out. So do it." "Sarah." David looked up at her, and the expression in his eyes made her blood run cold. "If I do a hysterectomy, I have to remove everything. The uterus. The remaining 4 puppies inside. They'll die." The words didn't make sense at first. Sarah's brain refused to process them. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we don't have enough blood. Max gave us 450 milliliters. We've used 400 of it already. There's maybe 50 milliliters left." And David's voice cracked. "To stop this hemorrhage and save Luna, I need to do a complete hysterectomy. It'll take at least 15 minutes of surgery. She'll need another 300 milliliters of blood minimum to survive it." "Then take more from Max." "We can't." Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "We already took the maximum safe amount. Taking more could kill him." Sarah stared at the monitor. Luna's blood pressure 58/38, dropping every second. "What about the puppies?" Sarah asked desperately. "Can we save them? If I finish the C-section and deliver the remaining 4 puppies, it'll take another 10, maybe 12 minutes. I can save them." David's jaw clenched. "But Luna will bleed out before I can repair the uterine tear. She'll die." The room went silent except for the beeping of the monitor and Luna's labored breathing. Sarah felt like she was falling. "You're telling me I have to choose between Luna and her babies. I'm telling you we don't have the resources to save both." David's hands were covered in blood, Luna's blood, staining everything red. "I need a decision, right now. Do I save the mother or save the children?" Sarah looked down at Luna, at the dog who had crawled 4 miles through sub-zero cold with a broken leg and a belly full of puppies, who had trusted Sarah with her last ounce of strength, who had chosen to live, to fight, to make it to this moment. "How long do I have to decide?" 8 minutes, maybe 10 before she goes into irreversible shock. Sarah felt Emily's hand on her shoulder, but she couldn't look at her, couldn't look at anyone. How do you make this choice? How do you decide who lives and who dies? There has to be another way, Sarah said. There has to be. There isn't. David's voice was gentle but firm. Sarah, I'm sorry. But in 8 minutes, I have to do something, or we lose everyone. Then Luna moved. It was barely perceptible at first, just a slight shift despite the anesthesia. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. She shouldn't be conscious. The propofol should have kept her under. But somehow, through sheer force of will, Luna was aware. She looked at Sarah. Then, with what must have been her last reserve of strength, Luna turned her head toward her exposed belly, toward the 4 puppies still inside her. And she pushed. Not a contraction. A deliberate, conscious push, forcing her swollen belly toward David's hands. The message was unmistakable. Save them. No, Sarah choked out. Luna, no. You can't ask me to. Luna's tongue, dry and pale, reached out and licked Sarah's hand once. Just once. Then her eyes closed. On the monitor, her blood pressure dropped again. 55/35. Sarah. David's voice was breaking. She made her choice. She's telling us what she wants. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room was spinning and all she could see was Luna's face. Peaceful now. Resigned. A mother choosing her children over herself. I can't, Sarah whispered. I can't let her die. I can't. The monitor beeped frantically. Blood pressure 50/30. Sarah, I need an answer. David's hands hovered over Luna's belly. Now. But Sarah couldn't speak. She was drowning in the impossibility of it all, in the cruel unfairness of a choice that should never have to be made. Luna had survived torture, abuse, abandonment, a 4-mile death march through winter. And now, at the moment of hope, at the instant when rescue had finally come, she was going to die anyway. The monitor screamed its warning. 48/28. Time was up. Do it, Sarah heard herself say. Save the puppies. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Someone stronger. Someone who could make impossible choices. David nodded once, his face grave, and turned back to the surgical field. I'll be as fast as I can. He reached into Luna's belly and extracted the 4th puppy. It emerged quiet, limp. David worked quickly, clearing the airway, rubbing it vigorously with a towel. For 10 agonizing seconds, nothing. Then a weak, mewling cry. Alive, Emily whispered, taking the puppy and placing it in the warming box they'd set up. The monitor showed Luna's blood pressure continuing its deadly descent. 45/26. 5th puppy, David announced. This one came out blue-gray, the umbilical cord wrapped tight around its tiny neck. Not breathing. Emily. Emily was already there. She unwrapped the cord with trembling fingers and began infant CPR, adapted for a creature no bigger than her palm. 2-finger compressions on the tiny chest. 30 times. Then she bent down and breathed gentle puffs of air into the puppy's nose. Nothing. She tried again. Compressions. Breath. Compressions. Breath. Sarah watched through tears, still holding Luna's head. Luna's breathing had become shallow, ragged. Her eyes were closed now, her body still except for the faint rise and fall of her chest. Come on, Emily pleaded with the tiny puppy. Come on, baby. Breathe. 30 more compressions. 2 more breaths. A tiny gasp. Then a thin, wavering cry that was the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. Got her, Emily sobbed. She's breathing. 42/24. Last one, David said. His hands were shaking now as he reached in for the 6th puppy. This one came out pink and vigorous, already squirming. The moment David cleared its airway, it let out a surprisingly loud cry. 6 puppies total, David said quietly. 1 didn't make it. 5 are alive. He looked at Sarah. They both knew what came next. Sarah gathered the 5 living puppies still wet, still crying, and brought them close to Luna's face. Luna's eyes opened one more time, just barely. Sarah could see her struggling to focus.
Look, Luna, Sarah whispered. Look at your babies. All 5 of them. You did it. You saved them.
Luna's eyes moved slowly across the tiny bodies. Then, with what must have been her very last strength, she lifted her head an inch off the table. Her tongue came out, dry and pale, and she licked the first puppy, then the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. One by one, she touched each of her children. A mother's final blessing. Then Luna turned her head and looked directly at Sarah. In those brown eyes, Sarah saw no fear, no pain, only something that looked impossibly like gratitude. Luna's tongue reached out one last time and touched Sarah's hand. Then her head settled back down. The monitor's steady beeping began to slow. Beep, beep, beep. No, Sarah breathed. No, Luna, please. Beep, beep. You did it. You can rest now. You can... Beep. The line went flat. One long, continuous tone that seemed to fill the entire world. 12:47 a.m., December 24th. Luna was gone. The room fell into a silence, broken only by the soft mewling of 5 newborn puppies and the steady tone of a stopped heart. Sarah collapsed over Luna's body, her shoulders shaking with sobs she couldn't control. Emily was crying too, one hand on the puppies, one hand on Luna's still warm fur. Even David, who had performed this kind of surgery hundreds of times, who had learned to maintain professional distance, wiped his eyes. James stood quietly in the corner with Max, who had begun to whine a low, mournful sound that seemed to acknowledge what had just happened. "I'm sorry," Sarah kept whispering into Luna's fur. "I'm so sorry. You deserved better. You deserved so much better than this." Emily brought the 5 puppies close and arranged them around Luna's body. They crawled blindly, instinctively seeking their mother's warmth, her scent, her presence. When they found her, they nestled against her, their tiny cries gradually quieting. They didn't understand yet that she would never wake up, never feed them, never protect them. All they knew was that Mother was here, and they were safe. Sarah couldn't bear it, the cruel innocence of it, the unfairness. Minutes passed, maybe 5, maybe 20. Time had lost all meaning. Then David's phone rang. He almost didn't answer it, but something made him look at the screen. An unknown number, Detroit area code. "Dr. Reynolds," he answered, his voice hoarse. Sarah couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but she watched David's face change. Confusion. Then shock. Then something darker. "Yes, that's correct. St. Mary's Hospital." A pause. "Tonight. About 3 hours ago." Another pause. "What are you certain?" David lowered the phone slowly, staring at it as if it had just spoken in another language. That was Detective Robert Hayes, Detroit Police Department. David's voice was strange, hollow. "They just raided an underground dog-fighting ring. Found 12 dogs. Arrested 7 people." Sarah looked up, her face streaked with tears. "One of the men they arrested," David continued, "gave them information, told them that one of his dogs, a pregnant German Shepherd, might be at this hospital. He wanted to make sure she was okay." The words didn't make sense at first. "He gave them his name," David said. "Marcus Crawford." Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. The man who did this to her, he turned himself in, confessed to everything, animal cruelty, running illegal fights. All of it. David looked at Luna's body. Detective Hayes said Marcus kept asking if the dog was alive, if her puppies survived. Why would he? Sarah's voice broke. Why would he care now? David held up his phone. Hayes is on his way. He said Marcus wrote something. A letter. For whoever found Luna. Sarah stared at Luna's peaceful face. At the monster who had tortured her for years, then thrown her away to die. And now wanted to know if she was okay. The question burned in Sarah's mind, acidic and unforgiving. Was it possible to hate someone and pity them at the same time? Detective Robert Hayes arrived at St. Mary's Hospital at 1:30 in the morning. He was 50 years old, with gray at his temples and the weathered face of someone who had seen too much of humanity's worst. But when he walked into the physical therapy room and saw Luna's body surrounded by 5 crying puppies, something in his expression softened. Ms. Mitchell. He approached Sarah gently. I'm Detective Hayes. I'm sorry for your loss. Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded. Hayes pulled a chair close and sat down heavily. I need to tell you about this dog. About who she was before. He opened a file folder and pulled out a photograph. Sarah took it with trembling hands. The dog in the picture was young, vibrant, powerful. Her coat gleamed dark and tan in the sunlight. She wore a blue collar with a gold medallion that read, Luna, Champion. But it was her eyes that struck Sarah bright, confident, full of life. So different from the pain-filled eyes that had looked at her just an hour ago. 4 years ago, Hayes began. Luna was a rising star at Michigan Canine Rescue. 18 months old, smart as a whip. They were training her for search and rescue work. He pulled out another photo. Luna standing with 3 children, all of them hugging her. A news clipping, Hero Dog Saves 3 from House Fire. February 2020, a house fire in Dearborn. Luna was doing a training exercise nearby when she smelled smoke. She broke away from her handler, crashed through a window, and pulled 3 kids out before the firefighters could even get there. Hayes's voice was quiet with respect. 7 years old, 5 years old, and 18 months. Luna got them all out. Got burned herself doing it. See here. He pointed to a patch of lighter fur on Luna's shoulder in the photo, the same scar Sarah had noticed on Luna's body. She was nominated for Hero Dog of the Year. Hayes continued. Would have won, too. But then Marcus Crawford happened. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Marcus worked at the canine facility, maintenance staff. He was nobody special, struggling with alcoholism, barely keeping his job. Then he got caught stealing from the donation box. $200. They fired him. Hayes pulled out a mugshot. Marcus Crawford, 34 years old, unshaven, hollow-eyed. Marcus blamed everyone but himself. Blamed the facility. Blamed the dogs that got all the attention and money while he mopped floors. So he decided to take something valuable. Hayes looked at Luna's body. He took her. How? Sarah's voice was raw. Waited until night. Luna knew him, trusted him. He just walked her right out. By the time anyone realized she was missing, Marcus had already sold her to a dogfighting ring in Detroit. Emily made a sound like she'd been punched. For the next 3 years, Hayes said, his jaw tight. Marcus used Luna to make money, forced her to fight. She won 23 out of 25 matches, not because she was aggressive. German Shepherds aren't natural fighters, but because she was smart and desperate to survive. He pulled out a record sheet. Sarah saw the numbers: $2,000, $3,500, $4,000, fight after fight. Marcus made over $50,000 off her, Hayes said. But here's the thing, he didn't just use her for fighting. 6 months ago, he deliberately bred her with the ring's most vicious male, planned to sell the puppies for thousands each. Sarah felt sick. But something changed when Luna got pregnant. She refused to fight. Just refused. Would stand in the ring and not engage. Marcus beat her for it. You saw the old rib fractures. But she wouldn't break. For the first time since Luna died, Sarah felt something other than grief. She felt pride. Last night, Marcus decided Luna was worthless. He was drunk, angry, behind on debts to the ring's operators. He took her out to that warehouse, broke her leg with a metal pipe, and dumped her in the snow. Hayes paused. He meant for her to die. Then why turn himself in? Sarah demanded. Why tell you where she was? Hayes reached into his jacket and pulled out a wrinkled piece of paper covered in shaky handwriting. Marcus drove home, had a few more drinks. Then something happened. He told us he kept seeing Luna's face, kept remembering something from 5 years ago. What? December 2019. Marcus was at Belle Isle Bridge, drunk, suicidal, ready to jump. Hayes's voice was careful. Luna was there on a training exercise. She was off leash. When she saw Marcus climb over the railing, she ran to him, grabbed his jacket in her teeth, pulled him back. Sarah stared at him. The trainer didn't even have to command her. She just knew. Marcus told us Luna stayed with him for 20 minutes afterward, just sat there, leaning against him, like she understood. Hayes held out the letter. Marcus went back to find Luna 3 hours after he dumped her. Couldn't find her. That's when his guilt broke him. He called 911, confessed to everything, begged them to find her and save her. Sarah took the letter. The handwriting was barely legible. To whoever finds Luna, she saved my life once. I was nobody, and she didn't care. She saved me anyway. I repaid her by destroying everything she was. Everything good. I don't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But please, save her. She deserves to live. She's a better soul than I'll ever be. Marcus Crawford. Sarah read it twice, 3 times. The words blurred through her tears. He wrote this before you found her, Hayes said quietly. He had no idea if she was alive or dead, but he needed you to know who she really was. Sarah looked down at Luna, at the hero who had saved children from fire, who had pulled a stranger from suicide, who had fought 23 times just to survive, who had crawled 4 miles with a broken leg to save her babies, and who had chosen, in her final moment, to give her life for them. Detective, Sarah said slowly, what happens to Marcus now? Trial in 3 months. He'll plead guilty, probably get 10 to 15 years. Sarah nodded. She didn't know what she felt. Rage and pity mixed together until she couldn't separate them. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. These puppies, Sarah said, looking at the 5 tiny lives nestled against their mother's cooling body. They're going to know who their mother was, not the victim Marcus made her, but the hero she always was. She picked up the photo of Luna with the 3 children she'd saved. And they're going to live the life she deserved. Every single one of them. Emily moved beside her. What are you thinking? Sarah looked at David, then at Emily, then at the puppies. I'm thinking, she said quietly, that Luna's story doesn't end here. It begins here. She stood up, carefully placing the puppies in the warming box, and turned to face Hayes. I want to see him. Marcus. I want to look him in the eye and ask him one question. Hayes raised his eyebrows. What question? Whether he thinks her sacrifice was worth it. Sarah was still holding the photograph of Luna when David spoke. Wait. His voice cut through the grief-heavy silence. Everyone turned. David was standing over Luna's body, his hand pressed against her abdomen. His face had gone pale. What is it? Sarah asked. I felt something. David's voice was tight. When I was closing the incision, I thought I counted wrong, but... He grabbed the portable ultrasound with shaking hands. This can't be right. He placed the wand on Luna's still belly. The screen flickered to life. And there, buried deep behind the spleen, partially obscured by tissue, was a seventh shape. "Oh my God," Emily whispered. "There's another one," David said, his voice barely audible. "A sixth puppy. The ultrasound missed it. It was hidden behind—" He adjusted the wand, his hands trembling. "I can see a heartbeat, faint, but it's there." Sarah felt the world tilt. "Luna's been dead for 28 minutes. "I know." David was already moving, pulling on fresh gloves. "But the puppy still has a separate blood supply. Maybe 3-4 minutes of oxygen left before brain damage. Maybe." "Then get it out." David hesitated, looking at Luna's body. "Sarah, she's gone. To cut her open again. It's what she would want." Sarah's voice was steel. "She died to save them. All of them. We don't leave this one behind." Detective Hayes stood abruptly. "Do what you need to do. I'll document that this was a medical necessity." David nodded once and picked up the scalpel. His hands were steady now, driven by pure adrenaline. He reopened the incision he'd just closed, working quickly through layers of tissue. Luna's body was cooling, stiffening. Every cut felt like a violation. But David pushed the feeling down and focused. "I see it," he said. "Wedged behind the spleen. That's why I missed it on exam." He reached in carefully, his entire forearm disappearing into the surgical cavity. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, his hand emerged holding a tiny, limp form. The sixth puppy was smaller than the others, gray-blue. Not moving, David placed it on the sterile field and immediately began assessment. No breathing. He suctioned the airway clear, rubbed the puppy vigorously with a towel, no response. "No heartbeat," he said quietly. "No." Emily moved forward. "No. We didn't come this far to lose this one." She picked up the tiny body, no bigger than a potato, and began infant CPR. 2 fingers on the chest, compressing gently but firmly, 30 times. Then she bent down and breathed the softest puff of air into the puppy's nose. 2 breaths. Nothing. She tried again. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. The puppy remained limp, gray, silent. Sarah found herself counting. 30 seconds of CPR. 45. A minute. "Emily," David said gently, "it's been too long without oxygen. Even if we get the heart started." "No." Emily's voice cracked, but her hands never stopped. "Compress. Compress. Compress." Grace pulled through after 4 minutes underwater. "This baby gets the same chance." She breathed into the tiny nose again. Sarah watched Emily's face, the desperate hope, the remembered grief of a daughter who didn't survive, the refusal to accept another loss. 90 seconds of CPR. The puppy's color remained deathly gray. "Emily." James stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Honey, I think—" "One more round," Emily whispered. "Just one more." She placed her fingers on the impossibly small chest and began compressions again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her tears fell onto the puppy's wet fur. 28, 29, 30. 2 breaths into the nose. Then she placed her finger on the puppy's chest, feeling for a heartbeat. Nothing. Emily's shoulders sagged. She started to lower the puppy to the table, and then it gasped, the smallest, weakest gasp imaginable. Barely a flutter of air, but a gasp. "David." Emily's voice was pure electricity. "David, I've got something." David lunged forward with his stethoscope, pressed it to the tiny chest. "Heartbeat," he breathed. 30 beats per minute. 40. 50. The puppy gasped again, this time stronger. Its color began to shift from gray to pink. Then impossibly, miraculously, it cried. The sound was thin, reedy, barely audible. But it was the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. Emily collapsed against her husband, sobbing. The puppy squirmed weakly in her hands, its tiny mouth opening and closing. "Miracle," Emily whispered. "Your name is Miracle." Sarah felt her knees weaken. 6 puppies. Luna had 6 puppies, and all 6 were alive. David took Miracle and placed her in the warming box with her siblings. The other 5 puppies seemed to sense the newcomer. They crawled toward her, a pile of tiny bodies seeking warmth and comfort. Max, who had been watching silently from his corner, suddenly stood. He walked over to the warming box and lay down beside it. Then, very gently, he began to lick the puppies through the mesh sides. "He knows," Emily said softly. "He knows they need a father." Sarah turned back to Luna's body. In death, she looked peaceful. Her face was relaxed, the pain finally gone. Sarah reached out and stroked her head one last time. "You did it, girl," she whispered. "All 6 of them. They're all alive because of you." Detective Hayes stepped forward quietly. "Ms. Mitchell, I hate to interrupt, but there's something else you need to know about Marcus." Sarah looked up. "When we arrested him," Hayes said carefully, "we found something in his truck. Medical records. For Luna." "What kind of medical records?" Hayes pulled out another document from his folder. "A diagnosis. From a veterinarian Marcus apparently took her to 2 weeks ago." Sarah took the paper, read the first line, then read it again, certain she'd misunderstood. "This says—" Her voice failed. "Luna had late-stage bone cancer," Hayes said quietly. "Osteosarcoma, advanced. The vet gave her maybe 3 months to live. 4 at most." The room went silent. "Marcus knew," Sarah whispered. "According to the vet's notes, Marcus was told Luna was dying, that she was in constant pain. The vet recommended euthanasia." Sarah stared at the document, her hands shaking. "But Marcus refused," Hayes continued. "The vet noted Marcus became agitated, said he'd take care of it himself." The implications crashed over Sarah like a wave. Luna hadn't just been dying from her injuries that night. She'd been dying anyway, and Marcus had known. 3 months later, Sarah Mitchell stood in the Wayne County Courthouse, her hand gripping a manila folder containing photographs that had become both her burden and her purpose. Marcus Crawford sat at the defendant's table, his head bowed. He looked smaller than Sarah had imagined, a thin man in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled, his eyes hollow, nothing like the monster she'd built in her mind. Judge Margaret Brennan, 65 and formidable, surveyed the courtroom with the stern authority of someone who had presided over 30 years of human failings. "Mr. Crawford," Judge Brennan began, "you stand accused of operating an illegal dog-fighting ring, 12 counts of animal cruelty, and aggravated abuse resulting in death. How do you plead?" Marcus's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender named Thomas Chen, stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes to plead guilty to all charges." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "Mr. Crawford waives his right to a sentencing hearing. He requests the maximum penalty under Michigan law." Judge Brennan raised her eyebrows. "Mr. Crawford, do you understand what you're saying? You're asking for 12 years in state prison without possibility of parole." Marcus stood slowly. His voice was hoarse. "Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that your attorney is obligated to argue for leniency on your behalf." "I don't want leniency." Marcus finally looked up. His eyes found Sarah in the gallery. "I don't deserve it." Judge Brennan studied him for a long moment. "Very well. Before I pass sentence, the prosecution has requested that a victim impact statement be read. Ms. Sarah Mitchell, please approach." Sarah's legs felt unsteady as she walked to the witness stand. She carried the folder like a shield, She didn't look at Marcus as she began to speak. Your Honor, I never met Luna when she was alive in the way that mattered. I never saw her chase a ball or wag her tail in joy. I never heard her bark except in pain. Sarah's voice wavered, but held. I met her on the worst night of her life. And the last. She opened the folder and pulled out the first photograph Luna as she'd been 4 years ago. Young and vibrant and whole. This is who Luna was before Marcus Crawford destroyed her. A certified rescue dog. A hero who saved 3 children from a fire. An animal with more courage and nobility than most humans ever achieve. She placed a second photo on the stand. Luna's broken body in the snow outside St. Mary's Hospital. This is what Marcus Crawford turned her into. A broken, bleeding, dying animal who crawled 4 miles with a shattered leg and terminal cancer to save her unborn children. Marcus made a sound something between a sob and a gasp. Luna died on an operating table at 1:47 in the morning on December 24th. Sarah continued. She died because she chose her children over herself. She died because Marcus Crawford spent 3 years beating the will to live out of her. And yet somehow, impossibly, she still had enough love left to fight for them. Sarah finally looked at Marcus. His face was wet with tears. But here's what you need to know. Your Honor, what Marcus needs to know. Sarah pulled out the medical records Detective Hayes had given her. 2 weeks before he threw Luna away to die, Marcus took her to a veterinarian. That vet diagnosed her with terminal bone cancer, stage 4 osteosarcoma, inoperable, incurable. Judge Brennan leaned forward. The vet told Marcus that Luna had maybe 3 months to live, that she was in excruciating pain, that the humane thing, the merciful thing, would be euthanasia. Sarah's voice hardened. Marcus refused. The vet's notes say he became angry, said he'd handle it himself. She turned to Marcus fully now. You knew she was dying. You knew she was suffering. And instead of giving her a peaceful death, you broke her leg and left her in the snow on the coldest night of the year. Marcus's shoulders shook. So I have a question for you. Marcus Crawford. Sarah's voice cut through the courtroom. Why, if you were going to kill her anyway? Why make her suffer? Why not just let her go peacefully? The courtroom was silent. Marcus stood slowly. Judge Brennan didn't stop him. Because I'm a coward, Marcus said, his voice breaking. The vet told me Luna needed to be put down, that it was the right thing, the kind thing, and I couldn't do it. Why not? Because 5 years ago, Luna saved my life. Marcus wiped his face with his shackled hands. I was going to jump off a bridge. I was drunk. I was worthless. I wanted to die. And this dog, this beautiful, perfect dog, she pulled me back. She didn't know me. Had no reason to care. But she saved me anyway. He looked at Sarah with red, swollen eyes. And I repaid her by making her a slave. By beating her. By forcing her to fight for my profit. I destroyed the only good thing that ever happened to me. His voice cracked. When the vet said she was dying, I couldn't face what I'd done. Couldn't face that I'd wasted her whole life. So I tried to make it look like an accident. Like nature killed her instead of me. But nature didn't kill her, Sarah said quietly. You did. Your cruelty, your cowardice, your selfishness, that's what killed her. I know. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I know. Judge Brennan spoke. Mr. Crawford, did Luna's puppy survive? Marcus looked up, and for the first time, something like hope flickered in his eyes. I don't know. Nobody would tell me. Sarah reached into her folder one last time. She pulled out a photograph taken just last week. 6 German Shepherd puppies, 3 months old, healthy and strong, 5 of them playing in a sunny yard. The 6th, the smallest, wearing a tiny blue vest that read Therapy Dog in Training. She held it up so Marcus could see. All 6, Sarah said. All 6 of Luna's puppies survived. They're alive because she gave everything she had to save them. They're alive because of her love, not your hate. Marcus stared at the photo. Then he collapsed into his chair, his face in his hands, sobbing. Judge Brennan let the moment hang. Then she spoke with quiet authority. Marcus Crawford, I hereby sentence you to 12 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections without possibility of parole. You will also be permanently banned from owning, possessing, or residing with any animal for the remainder of your life. She paused. However, I'm also ordering that you participate in the Michigan Prison Dog Training Program. You will spend your sentence teaching rescue dogs basic obedience so they can be adopted. You will give back a fraction of what you took. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Judge Brennan turned to Sarah. Ms. Mitchell, do you have anything else you wish to say? Sarah looked at Marcus one last time. She thought about hate, about justice, about Luna's final act of forgiveness, choosing life over death, love over revenge. Yes, Your Honor. Sarah's voice was steady now. I want Mr. Crawford to know that Luna forgave him. Not with words she couldn't speak, but with actions. She could have given up, could have let the cold take her, could have surrendered to the pain and the betrayal and the cruelty, but she didn't. She met Marcus's eyes. She chose to live long enough to save her children. That's who Luna was. That's the soul you tried to destroy and couldn't. Sarah took a breath. I can't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But Luna would want her children to grow up without hate in their hearts, so I'll try. For her. Marcus whispered something Sarah couldn't hear, but she saw his lips form the words, Thank you. Judge Brennan's gavel fell. Court is adjourned. As the bailiffs led Marcus away, he turned back one last time. Sarah held up the photo of the 6 puppies. Let him see it. Let him know that despite everything he'd done, love had won. The courtroom doors closed. Sarah walked out into the March sunlight where Emily waited with Grace, the puppy named for Emily's daughter. The little German shepherd wagged her tail and jumped up, her pink tongue lolling happily. Is it over? Emily asked. Sarah knelt down and buried her face in Grace's soft fur. No, she said quietly. It's just beginning. 2 years after that winter night, Sarah stood in the pediatric ward of St. Mary's Hospital, watching Hope, the 6th puppy. The miracle rest her head on a young cancer patient's lap. The boy smiled for the first time in weeks. Luna's 6 children had each found their calling. Valor served with the Detroit Police K-9 unit, dismantling 3 more dog-fighting rings. Grace brought comfort to nursing home residents. Justice worked search and rescue. Mercy accompanied a veteran through PTSD recovery. Faith, who Sarah had adopted, detected Sarah's own early-stage breast cancer, saving her life just as Luna had saved so many others. And Hope became a therapy dog at the very hospital where her mother had died giving birth to her. Emily stood beside Sarah, holding her adopted daughter Emma's hand. Emma, once abandoned like Luna, now had a family who would never let her go. Luna taught us something, Sarah said softly. That gratitude isn't just saying thank you. It's living in a way that honors the sacrifice. Family isn't just blood, it's choosing to love even when the world has given you every reason not to. She looked at Hope, at the legacy of one dog's impossible love. Here's my question for you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, someone you saved or helped, the way Luna was betrayed by Marcus? How did you find the strength to trust again?